This is not just a bill for the 97, although it is that. It is a bill for every single working person in this country. Because, let's face it, terrorism policing are with them to this. Time and again, the cry for justice was ignored by the British state because of who the victims are. Because they're working class. Because they're black. Because they're women and girls.
Like life is coming full circle, and as we pass this momentous piece of legislation, a piece of legislation that will change the way this country thinks and works about justice, it truly is a rewiring of the state and a passing of power from the authorities to the hands of ordinary people. And it is happening because of the Prime Minister's commitment to a country based on justice and fairness, and we thank him for that. He has honoured his commitment to the Hillsborough families, and what this House will do in passing this bill tonight is rebalancing the scales of justice so that we have justice for ordinary people going forward, and that, Madam Deputy Speaker, is some legacy indeed. We have all recognised that we simply would not be here tonight were it not for the dignity and the determination of the Hillsborough families who are with us in this chamber this evening. They, supported by the wider group of campaigns as part of Hillsborough Law Now, I do want to recognise their lawyers, Pete Weatherby, KC, and Elkin Abrahamson, KC, who are with us this evening to Inquest, Deborah Coles, who's with us as well, and all of the people who supported the campaign. This is the reason why we are here. But might I say also, we are here because of the City of Liverpool, represented so well by my honourable friend, the member for West Derby, who has been the parliamentary lead on this bill and has been entirely true to the people of his city, as has my friend Steve Rotherham, a former member of this House, Mayor of the Liverpool City region, who also carried forward this campaign to this point. I cannot describe my pride, Madam Deputy Speaker, in being in this House tonight to see this bill plant the values of the city of my birth at the heart of this country. And that is something of huge and profound significance that has been brought about by the Hillsborough families. And we recognise the significance of that tonight. As Steve Rotherham has said, the Hillsborough Law can't do any more for the Hillsborough families. Indeed, it will do much more for those who come after them. But that's what makes their campaign so special. They've done this for others, not for themselves. And those others include, and it's very important to remind the House of those other campaigns who we hope now will be lifted by this legislation as we pass it this evening. We do think, as the Prime Minister said, of the Grenfell survivors and families this evening, and I'm sure all London members will want to echo that, who are still waiting for justice and accountability over 9 years after the Grenfell fire. We think tonight of the Primados families who have fought so hard for fairness, supported by my honourable friend, the member for Bolton South East. West. I have been away for a while, but I'll get there in the end. But also, I know other members in this House have supported those who've suffered other treatment disasters, sodium valproate, mesh, PIP implants. These are still ongoing campaigns, and we need to recognise these campaigns in the House tonight, as we do the Chinook families, Madam Deputy Speaker, who were in court today. And I was only just speaking to the honourable member for Mid Dorset and Poole. in the lobby, and we pay tribute to them this evening. But let's not forget also in this list, and I know they have support from across this House, the servicemen who served this country in the post-war period in the South Pacific, our nuclear test veterans, Madam Deputy Speaker. How often in this House do we praise our veterans, and how in this case have we left those veterans without truth and justice in terms of what happened to them all of those years ago? And I think this House needs to hear their call for a special tribunal, Madam Deputy Speaker, entirely consistent with the aims of the bill we are passing tonight. This bill advances all of these just causes, and the campaign for truth and justice does not stop here. Indeed, it accelerates from here. I hope it ends the cover-up culture that has failed so many ordinary people in this country. We can never forget that for 20 years, an entire English city was crying injustice correctly, and yet this place ignored them for all of that time. We cannot forget that, and we cannot take away the hurt that that caused. We cannot forget that postmasters and mistresses serving communities up and down this country were branded as petty thieves and carried that stigma with them for years. Likewise, those who were infected by infected blood and were blamed that they had brought it on themselves through their lifestyle. We can't forget that, Madam Deputy Speaker. And let's finish where I started, that the Liverpool supporters were blamed for harming their own fellow supporters at a football match. That is what was done. That was left to stand for all of those years. These families here tonight had to live with that for all of those years. Imagine what that must have felt like. We have had a situation in this country where people suffer the trauma of the initial bereavement, the incident that took their loved ones away. Then they are re-traumatised by the behaviour of the state. We can't take that hurt away tonight, but we can put decency back at the heart of the British state, and that is what this bill does. And I finish again by praising the Prime Minister for making it happen, and this truly is his legacy. Thank you, Madam
Sir Edward Davey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
So there we are. That was Andy Burnham making his first speech back in the Commons, talking about the Hillsborough Bill, which aims to prevent cover-ups involving failures of the state, and of course the law taking its name from that 1989 awful disaster at Hillsborough, which claimed 97 lives at the Sheffield Wednesday ground, the match between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. And police leaders were found subsequently to have spread false narratives about the disaster, blaming Liverpool fans, as you heard there from Andy Burnham, and withholding evidence of their own failings. And it has that is the reason for the name of the Hillsborough Bill, or the Hillsborough Law. And Andy Burnham was closely involved in that Hillsborough campaign. Let's cross to Westminster and our chief political correspondent, John Craig. And, well, notably there, Andy Burnham praising the Prime Minister he's usurping.
Yes, and this is the bill. It's not called the Hillsborough Bill, it's called the Public Office Accountability Bill. And I thought one of the things that was interesting in Mr Burnham's speech, which was pretty passionate, some of the passion, I guess, that Labour MPs feel they've been lacking in Keir Starmer's leadership, was he didn't just talk about Hillsborough. He mentioned, must have been about a dozen cases of what are seen by many as injustices. For example, he mentioned Grenfell, Primados, a scandal that Sky News has covered in great depth. And he talked about the mesh scandals. He talked about PIP implants. He talked about the Chinook helicopter crash. He talked about nuclear test veterans and the postmasters and mistresses in the Horizon scandal. And so clearly, he says, I hope this will be the end of the cover-up culture. So clearly, if this bill does eventually become law, it's only completing its passage through the Commons this evening, got to go to the Lords. That may happen next week. The government obviously will hope that they don't run into any trouble in the Lords. Obviously, Mr Burnham sees it as very much a vehicle for righting all sorts of injustices, not just Hillsborough. First time we've heard him speak in the House of Commons since, what, 2017? First of all, he started off by saying, as I was saying, he got a few MPs' constituencies wrong and said he'd been away. I thought he looked a little bit nervous right at the start, but once he got going, the passion was there. And he had some notes, but he wasn't reading a speech or anything like that. And that will have delighted Labour MPs as they prepare to anoint him as Labour leader on Friday and then Prime Minister on Monday. I should say that this bill remains quite controversial because in the run-up to Sir Keir Starmer's speech opening the third reading debate, the Tories moved some amendments to try and water down the bill on this duty of candour. Now, the key thing that's happened in the last couple of days is that the government has overridden any objections from security chiefs about them being exempt from being covered by this bill. Now, the Tories were very unhappy about that, tried to get those curbs put back in. And just before Sir Keir Starmer spoke, there was a very controversial speech by Keir and Mullen, a government front bencher, in which he was howled down by Labour MPs for criticising the way the government had brought this forward very quickly. Of course, making the claim that it's just the Prime Minister in his final days in office trying to secure his legacy. Well, that may be true, but the overwhelming mood of the House, and we heard from Daisy Cooper, the Lib Dem deputy leader, just before Ed Davey and before Mr Burnham spoke, saying that the will of the House was very much to pass this bill. Well, it will go through the Commons. It may well be the Tories vote against it in, half an hour or so, but it goes to the Lords. It is on course to become law. And you heard all the references to some of the families, people like Margaret Aspinall, up in the public gallery. The Prime Minister saw them in the Downing Street garden this afternoon. You remember Margaret Aspinall spoke at the Labour Party conference, I think it was last year, and the Prime Minister gave that promise. Well, he said tonight that he has fulfilled that promise. But I think what most people will remember about the events of the last half hour or so is that pretty stirring speech from Andy Burnham, the King of the North, going to be crowned on Friday as Labour leader. Well, he certainly cheered up Labour MPs.